Hi Nick, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. I guess you're still not feeling great.
No, I'm feeling awful.
Right, well, we'll try to keep this short and we'll try not to make you talk too much.
Well, I'm already home, so that's fine with me.
180 pages, you better keep it short.
Well, we don't have to talk about every page. I gave people 2 months to
Well, okay.
review it, so hopefully people say it's great.
Perfect.
Because no one reached out, well, I had 4 or 5 members of the, Nick, I'm gonna pause or mute us until Cindy starts the meeting.
Sounds good.
Just a remark.
Nick, I've
She
unmuted.
would bring, she
Yeah,
would bring
quite
some
started.
up to my house for our family, and my son, as soon as she leave the house, he goes, oh my God, old people make the best cookies, because she always used real butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was so lucky as to her bringing me cookies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at Christmas.
So silly George is probably gonna be making the cookies and just crying about my parents going back home.
I'll grab you the sheet. That way you have all.
Yeah. I'm gonna slide this in.
Okay.
I'll get
I'll get
over it.
closer to.
Might not be
I did
helpful,
work
but
today.
it's just-
I did work the Main Street
Scheduled
today.
public comment,
Just
that's
noticed,
it.
like, oh, it could have changed. but oh well.
Yeah.
I do, a couple days a week only.
Hmm.
Yes, you come say hi to me.
Oh. Well, thank you.
Hey, well,
I skipped the words, so it wasn't like that.
You're at six.
Oh. Okay. Sorry. Who two working to start?
sorry, thirsty.
Okay.
First are tuned in.
Okay, we'll call to order the meeting for Wednesday, August 5th, 2026 at 6:02 PM. Roll call.
Alternate Jefferson Litt. Alternate Judy Murphy.
Present.
Chuck Howard.
Yes?
Kent Slaymaker. Katie Maxwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Ursula Kruzalegi.
Here.
Chair Cindy Olson.
Here. Okay, approval of the agenda as written, no changes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Who motioned, I'm sorry?
All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, public comments. This is the public comment where you can address commissioners and then there's no conversation that goes back and forth, but you want to go ahead? Do you have to spell in and stuff?
Yeah, I think let's start with, we have at least one person signed up for unscheduled public comment, but we'll start with these two that are scheduled.
Okay, so this is the public comment, okay, so unscheduled, should I say that one first?
No, I'd say let's start with the
Okay.
folks who signed up
Okay.
and
I would like to be added to the list.
it's, you wanna just take it down later. We'll just add you on as after Christian, so.
Lily? Can you just state your name just for the record, please?
Lily Williams, 412 Colorado Boulevard.
Thank you.
You need to speak up.
Okay, I will. Hi, I'm Lily, and I'm here after last week's debacle with the planning committee. I would like to propose a unified development code or adaptation of section 21-220 for all new developments and new builds in Idaho Springs. On July 20th, 2026, I, along with many other Clear Creek County residents, made public comments against the Kansas City team's development plans for Old Carlson. If the codes and laws, as they are written, do not stop impactful developments, which clearly don't meet the spirit of our town, then the codes need to adapt. Right now, Idaho Springs Municipal Code dictates a lot of things. However, there are not enough limitations on what can be built new here. A unified development code or I can never say that word out loud. Adaptation of section 21-220 that would outline restrictions, regulations, and expectations on all new builds and development in Idaho Springs. This code could include architectural requirements for all new builds, not just apartments, clear zoning restrictions and how much housing and density can be built, commercial, which like commercial zones versus housing zones versus buffers, because there was a lot of confusion on that with the Old Carlson development, lot line standards and setback guidelines for buildings, updated parking requirements for all new structures, horizontal massing requirements, community design elements, sidewalks, snow removal expectations, grading and drainage, clear definitions on what makes affordable and accessible housing in our county. Obviously, I know that that was outlined through like federal and state stuff. That's not exactly what I'm talking about, more like specific to new buildings. Guidelines on how new builds affect our natural world, including light restrictions and limit to light pollution affecting surrounding wetlands and transition zones and surrounding forests. And of course, penalties for noncompliance and sanctioning developers when a property fails to meet this development code. Obviously, we did not move here for HOA guidelines or anything restrictive, and I'm certain all Idaho Springs residents would agree, myself included. This is why this would not limit citizens on existing properties now, but instead set a precedent for what could come in the future. I want to also just say, like, I do want affordable housing here. That was a huge thing that came up. And I want to say, like, I'm obviously on the side of that, but the issue is massive new builds and like what that would do to the town. So I want to think about how we're building like new plastic buildings, and a lot of new developments are plastic. Is that it?
Just the 3-minute time.
Okay.
Are you close to being finished? You can finish.
Yeah.
Okay.
A unified development code or adaptation of that section would create a concrete plan that developers would stick to and not be able to divert from. And within those limitations, they can get creative. However, if they did scale back and not meet proposed expectations or conditions, like we saw with the field house, we would hit them with penalties for noncompliance. So I am also want to just reiterate this is for new developments and new builds and not for like what is already existing. We moved from Denver because the neighborhoods we were in were scraped and developed, and these massive structures were put in with limited to no setbacks or like height restrictions. And I just want to make sure that doesn't happen here because that's why we're here, and I don't want that in our community. Okay, thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Okay.
The second one on the list is Hannah Ervick, but I think she just wanted to include her comments in the packet, and I don't see her online or in the room. Right? So.
Okay.
Maybe she's traveling.
That's what I thought, but her comments are in the packet, so that's the end of our scheduled public comments, and then.
We have, Kristen, did you want to talk or?
Yeah.
Now we'll go to unscheduled. And it's the same for the 3 minutes.
Name and address for the record, please.
Christian Gray Hawkins, 412 Colorado Boulevard.
Thank you.
I have a shorter comment than Lily, but I do have 2 comments. 2 weeks ago, when the potential development in Old Carlson was being discussed, a big deal was made of the historic district's rules using the wording should rather than shall, making them completely unenforceable in the opinion of the lawyer. There is no point in having the rules if they are unenforceable. I would like to vocalize that it is a high priority to me that they be rewritten in a way that makes them enforceable. Considering most of the community seems to agree with them and want them to be enforced. My second comment is it seems like the downtown historic district was essentially the only reason the public had any meaningful impact on the outcome of a project that could have had a major impact on our community, like the one debated in the last 2 weeks. In light of this, I would like to propose either expanding the current downtown historic district to include more of Idaho Springs, or to create an additional historic district encompassing more of Idaho Springs, which could address concerns of areas which are more residential versus commercial. That's my comment.
Thank you. Okay. Name and address for the record.
Loving Courthouse. I am at 836 Minor Street.
Thank you.
So I'm here again about water restrictions, and hoping that the city can follow them a little more in line with what our residents have to follow. I am sad to see the waterfall back on, and the continued sprinklers, both at 4 Points and on city property. just saw a creek running down their pavement, parking lot the other day. I have lots of pictures if you want to see of sprinklers just watering the concrete, watering cars. And really, I would like to see the city come up with a more sustainable plan. Rather than having sod down, there are plenty of native options that create nice ground cover. There's pussy toes, kinnikinnick, sulfur buckwheat. There are huge plans that we could lay out to use native plants as infrastructure. We have a very beautiful ecology here in the mountains that I believe deserves to be protected, as well as our native pollinators and the predators and prey. The whole ecosystem survives off of these plants. So if we could adjust how we coexist with them, I think that would be really powerful, and it would save a lot of water, and it could even bring more tourism in with how amazing we are here in the mountains. So I just would like to prompt again that we really reconsider how we are using our water, especially on sod, non-native species that require pesticide and herbicide application, and usually just ends up getting covered in dog pee. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no other unscheduled or online?
Let me check online. I don't have anyone else online. I do want to note that I have a work session item prepared for some of these comments tonight, so more to come on some of that certainly.
Okay. Thank you. Any conflicts of interest with commissioners? So no conflict of interest. Approval of the minutes of July 20th, 2026. Need a motion in a second.
Motion to approve the minutes of July 20th, 2026.
Second. All those in favor, yes?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, general updates.
Sure, I have just a couple of general updates that I think are valuable on some upcoming code amendments that we've been talking about but aren't on the agenda tonight. So those include potential updates to the noise ordinance, which we haven't really talked about, but is coming as a work session item from council later on this month. So that will probably come to you guys at some point this fall to update the noise ordinance. Exterior lighting, Nick and I are working on, that's likely to be on there next meeting. Let's see, other things that aren't on, well, a few of them are already on the work session tonight. We have a potential work session item about non-conforming buildings and uses and doing some minor updates to that, which we haven't talked about before. And then the other one that I think is important to note is about parking. And that's, we talked a month or two ago, and I talked to council about thinking about updating senior housing parking requirements and maybe parking requirements for some commercial uses like rafting headquarters or things like that. Council wants us also to look at residential parking. So at some point in the next few months, I'll have a work session item that speaks to this is what maybe 15 or 20 other communities around the state have, and we can kind of do some comparisons and talk about potential recommended changes, or maybe there's no recommended changes. The other update that I'm sure everyone here knows, but just an update from our last meeting, that final development plan, council denied it. And so that, not getting it.
And then isn't there, they're doing a moratorium on the parking lots also, aren't they?
Yeah, the first reading of an ordinance was done last meeting, I guess, so a week and a half ago, to put a moratorium on any new non-city owned parking lots. So that'll go to the second reading.
Okay.
Or it might be this second meeting, it fairly soon, but that moratorium essentially would say none of the kind of private lots that have sort of popped up, and potentially even the wellness center lots would be moratorium until new standards are considered. So that will also probably come to this board at some
Okay. Oh, I thought maybe it skipped us because it went to council, which is
Well, the
fine.
moratorium certainly does, like
Okay.
they're just instituting that, but I think we'll be reading like, okay, how do we want to proceed with this topic? And that will likely come,
Have some procedures and policies and.
right, or potential code amendment that says do not allow, private parking lots, or this is how it's regulated and it's different, or who knows quite yet, but the moratorium could be in place next month or so.
Is there an estimation on how long the moratorium will last?
9 months.
9 months.
It's 9 months.
It's written in the, they could, come to a
Sure.
decision before that
Right.
and
Or if we come
or,
up with guidelines.
or it
something.
could be extended potentially, I guess,
Right.
if there's cause for that, but the initial draft ordinance says 9 months.
Is there a specific reason for, why they're doing the moratorium?
I would say that there's concern maybe isn't the right word, but I think people on council wants to discuss more, like, how do we want to allow non-city parking lots to come up? Are there more use standards that are needed? Like, is this something that's having negative impacts on adjacent uses? And so getting more data on that before 4 more spring up or something like that, I think is their goal.
And I would say it's fitting in with the comprehensive plan,
Like, hopefully,
the vision of the plan,
I would
which we
guess
all need
that
to revisit.
by 9 months from now, we will have updated the comprehensive plan, hopefully, so then that will allow us to have new goals that we can address.
Hey, look. Okay, any other updates, any questions for Dawn, for Linda? From anybody, what's going on? Okay, then we'll go to new business.
Actually, yes, I'm sorry. I've been walking by, on Colorado Boulevard across the street from the new police station. And I noticed some boulders having moved and there's some wreckage looking situation there.
Where?
Like by the Gold Rush Center,
Yes,
Yeah.
like buildings.
west of it.
The police station took a number of those boulders,
Mhm.
and I think they've just not finished the reconstruction, I guess, of that area.
Okay.
Because the police station still has a number of punch list items, and I guess that would be one of them, because, yeah, it doesn't look great right there.
Do they have plans for just, do something else and just leave it like that? I don't know. Cause that's a space that, Scraps also has brought up to the promotions board, for, potential beautification space. And, I was wondering I know that that's something they have on their agenda or something is happening, but something we presented on and they were interested. And I was just wondering if that had something to do with that, if there's a plan of just gonna be left like that, which I would like not to.
Right, well, it is on that private property. And so I think the city taking some of those boulders for the police station was unrelated to any future development in that area. It was just like, they said, sure, take some of these boulders because the police station needs it. And I don't know I don't think the city has any plans right now for that space.
Mhm.
And I don't know if the private property owner does, but I will look into that some more and let you know. But I don't know how it's supposed to look like a year.
I just thought it was kind of crazy that they went and took some rock from across the street to make this across the street look good, but then they left it looking like that. So that's it. Not that important, but you're awesome.
So, I mean, I think it's important. It's a very visible part
middle
of
town,
the
yeah, so
Colorado
I'll have to go
Boulevard.
drive by. I don't know for sure what you're
I
talking
was like,
about.
what?
A little triangle between the parking lot up, and one that goes up.
Yeah, it just came down that way.
It's
I
like
can't
a
say I
wall.
noticed it.
You can see it now that you go that way.
Now that I, yeah.
And I know that wall, like, it would be a perfect spot for like public art.
That's the proposal.
And I think like the owner, it sounds like is at least open to that, but I don't know that the city has any plans to do it
Yeah,
right now, but.
the reason why we brought it to this CD was because, when I tried to figure out with the owner what he wanted, what he was up for, he's even willing to put money to, landscape that space. But there's something about the right of way because Colorado over. So, anyway,
I'll have to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
not that important.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we'll go to new business, and the next agenda item is a public hearing on ordinance number 16, series 2026, and ordinance amending section 21-105 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to authorize the issuance of a conditional use permit as personal to the applicant and as a limited or unlimited in duration. The commission is required by law to hold a public hearing on this item. The order of this hearing will be as follows. I'll invite city staff to give a presentation. I'll invite public comment. Any questions from the commission may be asked and discussed. Then we'll close the hearing, and then we'll ask the commission for a motion. Any questions on the procedure? Okay, we'll now open the hearing at 6:22 p.m. on ordinance number 16, series 2026, and the ordinance amending section, do I have to read it again? Of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to authorize the issuance of conditional use permits as personal to the applicant and as a limited and unlimited in duration.
All right, I'll kick us off. I think this is relatively straightforward and we've talked about it before. Essentially, right, it is without changing any criteria, this change to the ordinance would allow the city to grant a CUP that only runs with the property owner, and if they sell it, that it would no longer be valid, or it would allow the city to grant a CUP for a temporary period. And so you say, all right, well, this is appropriate for 5 years, but not for forever, or it's appropriate for 6 months. And so that's basically what this does, and just gives us a little more flexibility. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
It seemed pretty straightforward, you know, and I think having more flexibility is better than not. You know, we have learned.
Any public comment? We don't have anybody here who signed up for public comment. Guys, no?
I don't really know this.
So essentially, like, let's say you have a lot that's zoned R1, which is single family, detached single family, and I should have gone into it since you guys are in the room anyway. We've talked about it a bit before. So let's say I have a lot that's zoned R1, which allows only single family detached. And then like garages and things like that. That's a lot of the city. But someone says, actually, I'd really love to do a duplex. We say, well, that's not allowed use. Conditional use permit would allow the city to consider whether that non-by right use would be appropriate for that lot. And if so, then we could approve it as a conditional use. That would basically now run with the land. What this could do instead is allow it to only be tied to specific time periods or ownership periods. And like that wouldn't really make sense for a single family or residential probably, but let's say that it's the lot right across the street's a good example, the red building. They are zoned historic district. It does not allow a rafting headquarters at that site, but maybe 10 years ago, I don't know, 5 years ago, they got a conditional use permit to allow them to operate a raft headquarters out of that building. And so and that essentially runs with the land now. So if someone wanted to come in and say, I want to do rafting headquarters here, they could. But what this code amendment would say, well, we actually are only okay with that for 5 years. And then after 5 years, you then have to come back or rezone or something. So.
It's just not in perpetuity.
Right, whereas now it's in perpetuity unless you don't meet the conditions, you know, like you're out of compliance and then you can revoke it. But this would like say, hey, even if you're in compliance, it's only for 5 years or 6 months or whatever it may be.
Okay, any other questions? No other public comment? Okay, we'll close the hearing at 6:25 PM. Wow, that was 3 minutes. Jeez. And then we'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of ordinance number 16, series 2026. An ordinance amending section 21-105 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to authorize the issuance of conditional use permits as personal to the applicant and as limited or unlimited in duration.
A second.
A second.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Chuck Howard,
Yes.
Katie Maxwell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ursula Kruzlecki,
Yes.
Chair Cindy Olson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wait, Judy is a voting member.
No,
Well, there's- Well, isn't it because of regular, Nick, can you clarify, there's only 4 regular members here tonight, so Judy can participate as a 5th, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Sorry, we didn't
Yes.
clarify that.
Judy Murphy,
Yes.
thank you. Sorry to leave you out.
We should
I
have
was confused on
specifically
that.
clarified that, but
Right.
as long as there's only 5 people, all 5 people.
Okay. Um,
Alright, nice.
okay, old business.
No old business from me tonight.
Anybody else? Okay, so we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:27 PM. And now we'll go into a work session.
Does anyone need a break before the work session? Or are you happy to keep rolling?
Keep rolling.
I was thinking maybe we put work session item B to last, just because that's potentially the longest one.
Okay.
So first one should be pretty quick. It's really just to answer questions if you all have them. This came up just kind of randomly. Carmen, city attorney, realized, oh wait, we're out of compliance with Colorado law and the Federal Fair Housing Act with respect to group homes. Right now, we only allow group homes in certain residential zone districts. And state requires that it's allowed anywhere that allows residential. So essentially, you can't say, well, you can't have a group home in R2. So we have to update the code first and foremost to allow that. What it also, so anyway, what it essentially says, and I'm not an expert on all of this, but essentially it's saying like group home's a residential home. Even if, like, there's nothing that says you can't have 5 random tenants in a home, like just because it's regulated by the state as a recovery residence or something like that, doesn't mean it's different. And so that would be change number 1. Change number 2 is just adding a bunch of definitions to group home, as you see in this draft ordinance that's already in place. It essentially, creates a new definition for a community residential home, for group homes for the age, group home for people with behavioral or mental health, residential services, support settings, and recovery residences. So it's become a lot more specific to address different state licensing requirements essentially for different types of group homes. And it allows them as by right uses in those districts. So that's the, I think, key change that maybe would cause questions or potential concerns is that, someone says, hey, I've got a single family home. It has 4 parking spaces, which is what I need for a group, to accommodate my 4 bedrooms with tenants. They don't have to go through any sort of process to get approved as that group home. They can just, well, other than like zoning permit application, which is administrative, and maybe a business license if it's considered a business. But they would still have to go through like a final development plan if they wanted to develop a new group home, like a new building for that use.
So it's existing places.
Right, so existing places, they probably wouldn't have to go through any sort of process, and that was already true for those couple of zone districts that allowed it, but it just expands that to a lot of other places in the city. And so this, next meeting will come back as a action item, but I figured we'd talk about it tonight in case folks have questions.
So it's more or less a state mandated type thing that you have to allow it.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what your area is zoned for.
Well, yeah, it's,
So
if
like
it's
if-
residential.
Yeah, oh, well, if we have a home in a C2 area and they want to do it, they can do it.
Except that if the home is C2, but it's not zoned to allow residential. Like, there's a lot of single family homes in C2
Right.
that are non-conforming, so it wouldn't apply to those necessarily because they're non-conforming. It's only for places where residential uses of the same type are a use by right. And so that's really RE, R1, R2, R3, RM, and the HD zone district.
Okay.
So if it's a commercial zone district, we could require more or that sort of thing.
Okay.
Or we could add it to those as well, I suppose. We're just not required by state law to do so.
Okay. I have a question. So somebody, you've got two houses, one's got people in it that it's just a family. They could come in and have a group home for recovering addicts right next door. Yeah, up to 8, isn't it?
Right, and also, under our current code, someone who's an existing addict could move in next door and we can't regulate that either. I think that's kind of the point of the state law. And so I think there's certainly in local communities, there's potential for pushback about probably not for like a group home for the aged, right? Like for folks over a certain age who need additional help. There's probably not a whole lot of pushback about that, but there's probably a lot more potential pushback for someone, going through a recovery residence or developmentally challenged or something like that, just because it's more of a taboo sort of reason why there's a group home there, I guess, but fact of the matter is those people are going through recovery.
Right.
And it's highly regulated by the state, so it's much more regulated than if just random 3, teens moved in next door because they leased a house for the summer or something like that.
Okay, so if anything, everybody should go through this and then you'll bring it back.
Right,
meeting.
yeah, I just figured this was a good time to introduce it and answer any questions.
You, here it mentions between, 4 and 8 people. When I did a little research, it said that in Denver, they do up to 12.
There was something in here with 12
So
too.
what is, just curious about what's the reasoning for the number, if it's like just a random number or comes from
Well,
somewhere.
I don't know, Nick, if you have any additional info, but my guess is that that's what the state statute requires is up to 8. And so Denver potentially just allows more.
Okay.
And so they're less restrictive than the state.
I was wondering if
I
it was
think that's correct.
lot sizes that we have in town or something.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
And the other key thing to note is, like, let's say someone had a 1-bedroom home, building code wouldn't allow 8 people in that home likely, and so building code is still relevant. So you can't have like a studio apartment with 8 people living in it. It would be if you can meet the building code requirements for occupancy.
But then
So-
they'd have to meet the parking too, right? Or not necessarily, because you can't tell how many people can live in a house and.
Well,
Have
so, I mean, we do require a minimum parking for single family residences of 2 cars. So
They would have to have a minimum of 2, but they could have 8 people.
right, unless, which is something we're looking into, unless we change our parking standards.
They won't be able to park anywhere else because there's more people around. So.
Well, yeah, they're not gonna go to the East End and go park.
No.
Right, because otherwise.
No, but that's interesting
they'd be
you said that, because that is something that should be looked at then, because I mean, it's not like we have an influx of that's what's going on, but it definitely would impact your neighborhood parking. You all of a sudden have, I mean, what's the chances, but even
Right. Well.
3 cars, you're gonna take your neighbor's parking then, they're 2 spots, so.
Well, and one of the things that came up during the public hearings for the final development plan for 1300 Colorado Boulevard was that there's a perception that we don't require enough parking for new uses. And so that was one of the, I'd say, 2 primary complaints that came up about the proposal, but, and so at least from one council member, we've heard the interest in, this is where it gets back to this parking study that I'm doing anyway, is, you know, we've heard like, hey, maybe we need to up our parking requirements, like parking minimums, and so I'm pulling all the data for that. So if we did say up our parking minimums for residential, then that would apply to this too.
So it probably will go hand in hand, which makes sense, 'cause
But then I guess the other thing to note is if you have an existing building, you don't have to provide new parking. You know, like I moved into my house, it has 0 parking spaces, but the city's not requiring me to build 2 parking spaces now because it's an existing home.
Becomes so hard because then you're drawing line between who's
I
been
know.
here and who's coming. So do we want the new people that come? I think it becomes very,
Right.
like, we're the people, the old people who've been here, and then now you're new, but we're not,
So,
you have to follow different rules than people who have lived here. I've only been here 5 years.
So new construction for a home would be the main thing, but then if you read in the plan, we
Yeah.
had 1 in how many years? Yeah.
One single family, yeah, and then 2 manufactured homes that are single family, so 3
Right.
single family homes. I guess.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a dilemma.
It is. Okay, so I would say everybody read through this and then be ready for the next. one. Okay.
Perfect, all right, fantastic. Well, number 2, I think will be quite exciting for some folks in the room to hear that we're already talking about it. It's almost like I knew they were gonna come in and talk about it.
See, we're 2 steps ahead.
So,
Are you plants?
Just knows.
so, you know, one of the big, I mean, obviously, the biggest thing we heard through that particular project is that there's concerns about how that project looked. But really, since I started this comprehensive plan update, the thing that's really gotten people to come to meetings is this idea of community character, which is kind of a subjective term, you know, because people in different parts of town think differently about their different parts of town and all that. But I think what the takeaway is in general is that most people are okay with the idea that like growth is going to occur and redevelopment is going to occur and things will change. But if they do, we need to ensure that that growth happens sustainably, let's say, strategically. And so with that in mind, I think my report, just to kick things off, is kind of like how there's a few ways maybe that we can address this, and I would like feedback on maybe like what planning commission thinks are the best things to do moving forward. And so just to touch on a few of them. First one is that section 21-205, which Christian mentioned is this 2-block buffer zone. Because it says should and it says, you know, strongly encourage and things like that, it's hard to require that. And it's difficult also to change in some ways because because it only applies to a very specific part of the city. There's 102 properties in this 2-block buffer. HPRC did a little work to determine that. And so to say, well, now these just 102 properties have to do something totally different. In the past, the attorneys have said that it's not a rezoning, but it certainly is something that will draw potential ire from those people potentially, because they're like, why does it apply to me, but not the other 900 people who are just 3 blocks away or 4 blocks away? So what I've talked with HPRC a little bit about in the past is like, maybe we don't change it from should to shall, but we say with more specifics and clarity, like, this is what we're actually talking about when we're talking about conformity with the district. And then it's like pretty clear to say, hey, developer, you wanna come in? You don't have to read a 100-page document, even though it should. Like, these are specifically what we're talking about. And then on top of that, we can update section 21-220, which is just commercial and multifamily architecture in general, because that would apply across the entire city. And so then there's not this equity argument, because really, if you're 5 blocks away, you still have an impact on the character of the city, in my opinion. It's not that someone in the 400 block of Colorado, or someone on, to use a recent example, or someone on the east end, like, is not going to have that impact. Like, I get the gateway is more important in some ways, but you build a huge, you know, plastic building on the east end, that still changes those. And so, and then I think the final thing that's important to note is that I think really the most important thing we can do is protect our existing buildings through historic designations. Where we can't require the property owner to become a national or become like a historic property. Like, we can't say, here's a new historic district, you're all in it, here's the rules. Like, it takes grassroots efforts to get the community on board with that. But there's so many properties around the city that easily could be a part of a district that would like lock in time. This building can't just be demoed and built something. But that's probably the hardest, because we rely in from the people who own those buildings.
So we're more or less talking like we've talked a guideline, but with strong language that these are the things. So when a developer does come in, you have the opportunity of giving them, this is what the will is of your planning commission, your citizens, city council.
Right.
And the developer then has that guideline and through your guidance and knows that you might get it approved if you follow some of this stuff, not like the last one because
Sure.
it didn't follow it.
So you could just do that and say, this is what we're actually looking for, or we could go much stronger and say, we're just gonna update our standards across the whole city. And everyone has to follow it for new builds or major additions and things like that.
But
And
you're talking which standards, I mean, some of the things that were commented on, we have all those things in the code already.
right, but I would say
Like
some,
setbacks, all that stuff is existent. It's
Right.
not like you have to,
well, I would
again-
specifically say section 21-220, which is multifamily and commercial architecture, because like when you look at it, it's and the other one I would say is height limits, which I didn't mention before, but.
which we do have height limits.
Right, but it's 35 feet everywhere except for on the east end where parts of it are higher. And so
And we heard.
no matter what you design a building to look like,
It's gonna look
if
taller.
it's 35 feet tall and it's a brand new home next to a cottage building that's 18 feet tall, like that's
It's gonna look 60 feet tall.
so. And again, like you can't really argue with it. You say it's 35 feet, so it's allowed per code. So is it worth us saying, you know what, maybe we wanna make it shorter? Maybe we don't wanna allow a 3-story building.
I remember when we visited the 35, that was, or maybe it was the East End, I'm thinking.
Well, the east end's even higher,
Yeah.
and this has not
Yeah,
been addressed
maybe
yet.
that's when I remember it.
And the east end's gonna be a really interesting test case for us one day. Because there's a port, like they did this whole shade study, it was before my time. And there's parts of the very east end near that roundabout interchange that would allow a 4.5-story building, like 50 feet. And so, like, that was approved back in 2018. that we could build a 46, 50, plus foot building. And and that would just meet zoning on the east end of town in places. And so,
What do you think's caused the drastic shift? If all of that was approved by commission, by city council.
That was down there.
It was
But
when
still,
we
like,
redid the comprehensive plan.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago, only 8 years ago, and so like now everyone's so against it, am I?
Yeah,
I'm just curious, I wasn't here, so.
yeah, no, I mean, it felt like on that side could be bigger. I mean, I don't know, at that time, it felt like it was a thing, it could happen.
I think it is.
I feel like
hotels.
after what we're hearing from the community though, I don't feel like anybody's interested in that kind of height. And I mean, also part of our discussion was like the shade of the buildings and,
right.
oh,
Well, and that was kind of how it ended up at these heights, I think, reading back through the East End Action Plan specifically was, these are areas where if you gave additional height allowances, it wouldn't cause shading issues for streets or for other properties. But at that time, we didn't do anything with the historic district or the central part of town or the west end. It's been 35 feet as long as I can tell. But it's just no one has built anything really until the field house apartments.
Well, the senior center was
Right.
the senior center, then the clinic,
Right, and both of those are basically 35
35.
foot tall
That's what I mean,
buildings.
they've been
Even
built since
the
then.
Habitat homes are basically right at 35, and so I think it's fair to say, if someone's redeveloping a property in town, they're probably gonna build to the maximum heights. And so given what we heard and what council ultimately determined with respect to architecture, I think height plays into it, but I also think like when you look at this section 21-220, it just says like, it says we need at least 2 of the following architectural elements: overhangs, recesses, projections, shadow lines, reveals. You're like, okay, great, well, you can pretty much do that with any design you want.
Yeah.
You could build like a beautiful glass, super modern building, stick that anywhere in town and it's gonna meet these requirements. As long as they meet the setbacks and the parking and the height and all of that. So we don't have to decide anything today, certainly, right? But I
Well,
wanna
I guess
know,
my thought is, how do you want to go about starting to address those? I mean, you've had a good experience with this past developer and recommendations that
right,
Yeah.
well,
he didn't
it
do.
seems to me, Cindy, that the only way that we can do is actually modifying the code instead of making arrangements on the side with the developers.
That's what I mean, how does he want to go about starting to pick which ones need changing?
do you think it's, I guess
How do we do it?
I guess I have 4 questions and maybe it's just, that's the easiest way to do it. So question 1 would be, do we want to clarify that buffer area and come up with standards that say, this is what we're actually looking for when we say you need to like conform with the district? Maybe it's still strongly encouraged, but if we say this is what we're legitimately looking for as far as design and materials, like that helps guide them and they could still just not do it. You can send them every document we have that says this is, pages and pages of info about every single building in the historic district. But if you don't read it, it doesn't matter. Or if you can't afford to do it, it doesn't matter. So like, is it worth clarifying that?
I would say yes. And you have the buffer area.
I think so, and
Yeah.
that I would like for us to try to figure out a way that is the word that shall, the enforcement. I mean, I don't know if it can be not just like you can do any of these things, or it can be like you have to do any of these things instead of you could, I feel like everything in general has to be stronger, but at a specific point, I think, yes, specifications on buffer zones and specifications that to make people have to go through them and not just have the option.
Right.
But I mean, that's where it goes.
Right. I think, okay, so is that a fair consensus to say like, let's clarify what we want because it's pretty gray right now. But on top of that, no matter what it takes, it's worth turning that into a mandate rather than a strong encouragement for the buffer zones.
Yeah, I
think
mean,
so.
because from the last experience, honestly, it just wasted everyone's time. Like, not because of that, not in a negative way, but like, if we would have known it's have to instead of meh, like it would have helped to say, well, this doesn't need any of it, we can't even bring this to council or anything because it doesn't need any of the mandated stuff.
Mhm.
And so I didn't mean to be harsh when I said it was time, I didn't really mean that, but it just is, it would help clarify for where we sit, right? To say, well, of course we can't do that, it doesn't meet even the mandates.
Right.
And so it's,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think where it gets a little fuzzier is like, do you just say, and we'll come back with more info on this, but like, there was, like, I think the library certainly fits in with the rest of the district, but it's a different architectural
Yeah.
style.
very different.
And so like, if someone proposed another Gothic revival building or something like that, right? In the buffer zone, are we cool with that, or do we want it to be like this Victorian era design? Like, does that matter? That's something we'll have to think about, because if you're clarifying like, this is what we want, then it kind of needs to be clear enough that it's then we're not debating like architecture, because we're not a design review commission.
Right, nor should we ever be, right? And that's, the curious thing about Carlson is it doesn't fit either. Whole building, I mean, yes, the brick does, but the style of it
Right.
doesn't fit the rest of downtown. It is a beloved building because of the history to it. But if we're creating these new codes, that wouldn't fit in the future. Not that that matters, but like it just is, it'll be tricky to figure out what we have the right, in a sense, to say is
Sure.
mandated and what's not.
Right, and I'm happy to, I would say for future meetings, like I think you, Cindy, as chair, have a lot of leeway to say, like, do we want to make this more of a public? Like, do we want to schedule some, because work sessions, just for reference, really are work sessions with like the board and staff and that sort of thing. And like, if there's questions that, like, the board can open it up to questions or things, but the goal is not to like turn into a 5-hour public forum. But do we want to schedule like a public forum and maybe even recommend getting some like interested citizen parties who have some sort of reasonable background in architecture or something like that to like convene a committee?
I think if it's gonna help you, yes, because like you mentioned the school and then the Victorian and then the library. To me, it's all three. So you can't just call it Victorian because something else could have fit there or anywhere. I mean, within that buffer zone.
Sure, I mean, certainly.
Yeah, it's not gonna be just one, it can be.
Right. Well,
Or
I
we
mean,
can decide it's just gonna be one from now on. I'm not
We
saying that that's the way to
can,
go.
but
right,
I mean,
that's what I
yeah.
mean, like, is
I
it
don't
really
know
about the
if
building
Victorian's
form?
the right
Is it about the building materials? Is it about massing?
Right.
Is it about the
Or
actual
the
architectural
neighbors.
style? Like, I think there's a lot, because like, for example, Uchi's house was built in, I think, the 50s, maybe 60s, and it's this like
Mid-century.
mid-century sort of modern
Yeah.
type style. Like, no one is saying, well, that's such an eyesore, it doesn't make any sense, but like,
by trees.
it's a very different style.
Right.
I
think getting public feedback is great. One caveat from the last meeting is that, I guess, and I'm not here for it, but when the idea of Carson being sold, we had a convening of the public and everyone brought up the promises that were made. Not really we want to be careful with what we're saying is going to go there,
Sure.
right? Like it is a unicorn to find what's going to go in that property. And so if we have a public group meeting, we have to remind us and everyone else that this is the hope, right?
Sure.
We are waiting on someone to come and purchase these properties and turn them into what we're going to mandate, but we can't make promises per se, and that it's going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
All we can do is set
Yeah,
the
yeah.
like, this is what it needs to
Because
look
it was
like.
brought up in most comments that this was what we were
Okay.
told was going to be here, so it just is.
Mhm.
but I'd
Okay,
like
so
to
the
feedback.
buffer area, you said you had 4?
Yeah, so number 2 is just like that section 220, which is about just multifamily architecture throughout the town, regardless of buffer. Like I said, if you read through it, it's not super clear, And so, like, I would argue, other than some kind of nitpicky things, that could easily be revised, like someone could submit that exact architectural rendering on a smaller scale on the west end or the east end, and it would meet the code.
Right.
But like, is that okay with us as the city? If like that exact thing was placed 4 blocks that
I
way.
think it could have made a heck of a difference. It's,
I feel like it would have been better received if it wasn't
Yeah.
right there.
But I think the question is, should it be?
well, and then I don't
Right,
know
I
if you
think it
guys
should
were
have been, but, like,
aware,
should it be
he
received?
changed his drawings when he went to the city
Oh,
council
did he?
meeting.
I didn't
Oh, yeah.
watch it,
he
we were-
changed- he
But it was
changed-
still the same like overall form
Yeah.
and mass.
All he did
was change the color.
He did, yeah, I'm like, what? This isn't even this.
This is an odd question, but it kind of relates to this. Do we have studies that show, because we always say the gateway. Do we have studies that show that more people enter town here? Because there are a lot of people enter town down.
No,
The east
because I
side.
always think.
And so like if we're,
Sure. Well,
my reasoning to ask this is because we are worried about the historic district for very good reason. But also, if we have more people accessing Idaho Springs down there and we allow anything to go down there, they're not gonna make their way down here and see, because they're gonna see what we created and then leave. So
I think they're both gateways.
the east end generates more sales tax per
Yeah.
year than downtown.
Okay.
Which strikes me that more people actually go to that end of town.
Yeah.
But people linger a lot longer downtown,
that makes sense.
which is fair, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different experience. We just make a lot of money off gas stations.
Yeah.
And fast food restaurants
Okay.
is essentially what it comes down to, I think.
Yeah,
But so to
And not
that
everything.
end, like the welcoming on the east end or the west end is also important, and that's where I mentioned like, I think our current architectural standards are pretty vague.
Yeah.
And do we want to consider at least strengthening them for across the board for any new multifamily or commercial development?
I think it's something to think about.
Mhm.
I mean, this town isn't just the historic district, this town is the
Yeah,
town.
it
and
is,
All
yeah.
encompassing, so.
Yeah,
I think
we're not
having
that big,
some-
we could take advantage of that and make it exactly what we want it to be.
And if somebody came in on that east end and decided to buy Hill Daddy's restaurant and raise it and then build a 3-story, 4-story, 4.5-story building, is that what we want? Coming out of that big roundabout, or that big roundabout?
It's a lot of traffic there, though.
The truck's gotta go around it.
Yeah, and I
Barely.
mean, and
That's
when
why
we talk
it's
about
big.
this too, I mean, with the first point and now this one, I strongly feel like we should invite the community to help us make the decisions. I would like it ideally for it to be as organized as possible. Just cause I've seen other situations, we've done a few different things here in the community and I mean, people can go from here to all the way here, so I feel like if we're able to somehow have information for people to have before coming here, so they know what is happening and they're not just like pulling things that are whatever.
Examples of different styles.
Yeah, like, so with that, so that is one part of it. Another part is like, I also would like us to try to figure out how to invite people that architects in the community, people that knows about history and, you know, that would want to, and that we can have assets,
Two.
you know, to help
There's
us with
3 right
decisions.
there. You guys
I don't know
just
exactly
volunteer.
where is the you know, the balance point, because we wanna, anybody that wants to participate, we should allow them to participate. At the same time, ideally, people will come a little bit with you know, educated about what's happening. So having people that knows what's up, or you know, that are careers
Mhm.
are oriented to this
Well,
architecture stuff would be ideal.
That's a good point. Erica Dubik, she's the vice chair of the HPRC and she's the Regional Housing Authority Director now. She wants to host 2 meetings in the near future that are sort of education based. One is like an affordable housing 101 because there was like, we probably could have saved an hour and a half of that meeting 2 weeks ago if folks had just called me ahead of time and asked questions about like the mechanisms that keep it affordable and like how it actually gets funded and what tax credits are and all those things. Because like, I've read probably 10,000 pages of documents about things over the last few years, you know, it's just like forced into it. But we also want to do kind of like a historic preservation 101 sort of thing with the HPRC that kind of says like, oh, you've got an old building, like here's some of the like defining features of these types of styles. Like this is what it means to be in a historic district. This is what it means to designate and how it benefits you. This is like what these terms mean, that sort of thing. And they're kind of like educational sessions, kind of like we did with our little window workshop like a month ago. You know, we just taught people how to repair a historic window. So this would be more in the classroom. So maybe that's the starting point, is say like, come to this meeting, learn a little bit, and then let's do some like community forum type things or convene a small working group of interested parties. And just like almost do a design charrette that talks about like, okay, if we're over there, you know, is it different than if you build it over here? And if not, then let's just put in the same standards everywhere. That doesn't matter what the buffer zone says, because you're gonna have to build a similar looking building no matter where you go. Maybe that's not the right way of doing it, right?
My
Because
head's,
Yeah,
flip
mine
flopping
too.
back, because then it's like, well, it is expensive to build, to look like historic buildings, and so then we expect everyone to come in who's building anything in this town to pay a pretty penny in order to do it. Most people can't, so it's,
But the historic district already has to follow it. To have the buffer follow it, it could be that much more, the ability, there's different options. Where the historic district, the options are pretty tight, where the buffer could be
what about
the
down there?
mid-century, it could be well,
What about the east end?
That's
Like
a
if we're
good-
saying it's the same across the board,
well,
now you have to build a big, I'm not, Victorian I'm choosing because
right, or
Victorian.
a Gothic,
or
or,
Gothic down
yeah,
there to build a.
yeah. I think those
know.
answers will come as
Yeah.
we start doing it.
Yeah.
What's 3 and 4?
okay, number 3 is section 220 specifically applies to multifamily and commercial. Should we put in basic architectural design standards for new single family homes? Because that has the potential to drastically change neighborhoods in a hurry. You know, you look at some of these really beautiful neighborhoods in Denver that now just have a big cube, you know, and it looks nothing like the cozy bungalow next door. And I'd say 99% of our single family homes, not including like mobile homes or like most of our homes were built before 1960.
Right.
And most of them follow one of like several different architectural styles. So we've never done any standards for single family home. You could build like a mansion like up in Breckenridge, you could build a box. Like, do we want to I would not recommend going as far as like what Georgetown does, where there's like a whole design review committee.
Yeah.
But like, do we want basic standards like we already have for multifamily and commercial?
Okay, it's something to think about.
That might be, because I was thinking, before that my only worry is that the more inclusive that we want to be, the longer it's gonna take, and then hopefully we don't get another proposal before we can tackle all those things, and then we're at the same spot again.
Sure.
So
We could break
maybe
it up.
going this way could be a way to be like, okay, we're gonna cover that thing right now in case it comes out fast, and then we can continue to work on the other things that are
That makes sense.
they can be longer term.
I mean, because the hope is to sell Carlson at some point, right? We just didn't want it to be that development. But the hope is for the,
I mean, they're
The school
gonna try
district
to
not to
sell
continue
it. If it's
pay
something we
for
like or the
it.
community likes or
There
not,
was
it's not
more
our,
issues.
our hands.
yeah, well, I get that. I know that one was not the right fit.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, if we tackle it first, so that if another one does come up that has more potential and is received better and fits, we have mandates to fit it.
Yeah, that will be my biggest worry about, because I mean, obviously work needs to happen, but if work is gonna take some time to
Sure.
happen. So is there anything that we can figure out to do to address those specifications that we are thinking about doing? Maybe that would be the way to go. But
You'd still have to have input, so you know which direction you're going with styles and stuff. What's the fourth one?
Height.
I feel like height is one we could try to figure out fast if possible. At least on the buffer zone.
Yeah.
Even if we end up deciding that we're doing the whole thing the same, but at least if it's, like I'm trying to think of what things can we do now that will help that space be that one, the space that most people want it to be. I just don't wanna be in that situation again.
Right, but the fact of the matter, if that's the direction, then certainly like we'll go that direction and like, run it past council, I guess, as well and all that, but I do think any lot in town could have a proposal come in tomorrow.
Right.
And are we okay with like sacrificing, let's say, a lot on the east end or on the west end to this like idea of architecture not matching with what we want it to be, just because we've prioritized this other area a little bit more in the immediate because we think there's more risk of something being proposed.
So you're saying we have to look at the whole thing.
Well, I mean, that, I just think,
Makes sense.
and I could
Pick
like,
and
we could
choose.
obviously accelerate like buffer zone regulations
There
first.
could be like commercial in the East End overlay area could have maybe less strict as the buffer area, but they all kind of mesh together. Does that make sense? Like maybe we do allow the 35 feet down there and you change it to 25 feet up here. But that East End, there must be a line drawn where the East End overlay started, where you use that same area.
Right. Well, I mean, that overlay district, like if we, let's say we were considering an ordinance right now that says the height limit is now 25 feet for R1 and R2 and C1 and C2 and R3 and HD. That wouldn't apply to the overlay district. We would have to update the zoning for the overlay
Okay.
district separately.
That's what I thought it was, okay.
So that's,
Yeah.
one where maybe we say, I guess that's a fifth thing is like overlay district. I'll just write like lower priority at but the overlay district defaults to the regular code in a lot of ways, like architecture or parking or signs or something like that. So I still think could be affected by some of this stuff, but like height and setbacks and open space requirements would not be affected because they're specified for the overlay.
Dylan, to your question about like, if we decide which one to choose first, this or that or whatever. My thought is that maybe, one of the variables that we analyze could be the impact that they have, because, this property is Gateway is like the biggest property, right, in the area. So I feel like if you're saying if another proposal comes from the east end of town, if it's, I don't know, could we like by the size, lot size or whatever, because I feel like if it's a small house, it's not, the impact of something that builds at a smaller scale compared to this one will be different. Like maybe the neighbor won't be happy about it, but maybe it will just be a neighbor. But obviously in Carlson, it was more than just the neighbors, like the whole community. So that's, I'm just trying to help you figure out how can we make a decision about what to tackle first, and that's.
I personally think we could tackle all of these at the same time, but as different amendments that we're working on at the same time. Right,
I
so
agree.
like maybe the buffer zone standards, section 21-205. We can like get through quickly because there's like clear direction and we've done the research and all that. And it'll take longer to do this section 21-220 update because there's a lot more that we want to put into it. But there's no reason we couldn't start working on all of them, I guess, is my thoughts.
I think so too, because I think once you start on one, you're gonna think of something for the other and keep going. They're gonna cross.
Right, and some of them I do think play in together
But,
quite well. Because I think regardless of if it says Like the buffer zone says you shall conform with the downtown historic district. Like, I really don't think that we would have any reason to, like, that wouldn't be enough to deny a project because it's 35 feet tall.
Right.
Because we have a building, like.
Right.
Some of these buildings are close to 35 feet now. Like, if someone said this is a beautiful brick building, but it's 3 stories and so that doesn't fit, like, I don't really think that would fly under the buffer zone because. Like height, it says it's 35 feet, like, we can't just change code because we don't think it fits.
But we could change the buffer zone height.
Well, the buffer zone doesn't say anything about height,
And you have to, what's
we
the
can
it's the
add
buffer?
it.
underlying zoning district.
Yeah,
How can we modify that though, by that is specification? of
well, what's the
buffer
buffer first? What's the buffer zone? You gotta come up with that
Okay,
first.
so we do
Yeah.
that and then, but we could come up with that. That's something we could do, that's my question.
Well, we know what the buffer zone is, it's 2 blocks of the historic commercial district. And that's generally 12th Avenue to the west, Virginia Street to the north, 19th Avenue to the east, and I-70 to the south.
So it's 2 blocks kind of each way, pretty much.
It's
Okay.
just a radius, but, and if people get clipped, so there's like, based on what HPRC has looked into, there's about 102 properties. But it still is like kind of gray, right? Cause it's like, doesn't specify specifically this is the exact boundaries of this buffer zone, it just says it's a 2-block buffer zone.
See, I think we need the exact boundaries. Cause then you're gonna run into, when somebody comes in, well, it's not in the buffer zone. Well, yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. So I think you're gonna have to have,
Right, but the buffer zone
Streets.
still doesn't speak to like, it must be this height in the buffer zone.
right,
But what we could do, and that's question number 4, I think that I had was, do we wanna consider just changing height limits in any or all zone districts around the city? And I mean, I don't know if anyone.
Yeah,
I was gonna ask.
I have a few notes that I wrote down.
Are we allowed to?
Well, I mean,
yeah.
Like
But you're
one
gonna
is-
be on these committees.
well,
So,
No, I'm just gonna be annoyed.
I'm interested in knowing like does. Like, would you have had the same concerns regardless of design if it was still 35 feet tall, but it was an all brick building, let's say,
Well,
somewhere in the buffer?
I was about to like, yes, that was like one of the things I was thinking of speaking to is, you know, it quickly gets into like a gray area where I have to like sit and think about how do you define these things. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to every possible 3-story building right there. There are like other ones on Minor Street that are almost that height. But, you know, the more it pushes that boundary, the more I expect from it design wise. And it can't be 3 stories for almost the entire block like Carlson was. You know, part of what makes a downtown like this work the way it does is the scale of the buildings overall is much smaller than most modern development. None of these buildings are the entire block. They are an eighth or less of the block that might be 3 stories tall on that spot. So, you
that's
know,
something we can put in the design elements too, is that it only can be this length. And then there has to be a break in the roof line.
Well, it does
Where-
require that, and they did have breaks, it wasn't like a full story break.
Right, but we
it was
could make it
designed-
more defined, like he's saying, where you look at downtown and it's not,
I
where
almost
that's.
wonder if like buildings over, like, I don't know what's possible or what isn't, but you know, buildings over a certain size just can't exceed a certain height. Maybe buildings under a certain footprint can go up to a larger height. You know, you trade one for the other, but you can't have a building that maxes out every possible dimension. You know, like something I think about is there's a few 3-story houses in town. Our house is 1 story, and our house is only 1,000 square feet. If you put a 3-story house that's the same footprint as ours next to ours, which is basically the house next to us currently, it's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. But if you put a house that's 7, you know, whatever, that has 4 times the footprint and is 3 stories tall next to our 1,000 square foot single story house, like, we'll never see the sun again.
Well, and this is the point I'm making about single family is, there's nothing stopping someone right now from buying 6 single-family homes on 6 lots, tearing them all down and building a 5,000 square foot house that's 35 feet tall right next to my house or next to their house or next to any of our houses in this room. And we've seen that happen in a lot of places around this community, and that has not happened here at all. But
We could have one.
it could happen, and so is it worth saying, like, we need to go down this path, and maybe it's a lesser priority at the moment, but do we wanna go down that path? Because if we're talking architecture around town, like, I think we should talk about like what we wanna see everywhere. Maybe we don't care right now, and we'll revisit it later. but-
I think we'll always care. I think it is the conversation of priority. The idea of 6 houses going up for sale in this town at the same time for someone to buy is really hard to fathom in my head, because we have very few properties.
I will say though, that across the street from us right now, there's a trailer park that occupies the entire lot, except for 2 houses. It's currently for sale,
It's pending.
that failed.
Oh,
That-
no, it's pending. Anyway, sorry.
No, that one failed. It's twice, but anyway, and then the house next to that one is owned by a guy who I think is about 90 years old and poor health.
Mhm.
So then there's only one house on the block that's owned by friends of ours who are our age. It is entirely probable that that entire block could sell in the next year. And because we are at the west end of town, there is the exact same developer could come back with the same plan for across the street from us, and there's like nothing we could do to say anything about
The
it.
property is zoned R2, which
I
would
was just
allow
gonna ask what
single
it's zoned.
family detached, single family
Single.
attached, which is townhomes, or would allow duplexes.
Mhm.
But you could rezone it potentially, and then you go through the whole zone process. But even still,
So they
you
could
could
still show up with
well, you-
plans for the entire block for 35 feet.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Correct, yeah, they could have 35-foot tall townhomes,
Mhm.
or,
Which I'm not under the illusion that that's not, something is going to happen to that. But the entire block being 35 feet, I mean. In the
And I feel
winter,
like
we would
there's
have a shadow in
also
the front yard.
spaces for that, for example, like the Habitat homes, they're right against the mountain, I feel like that's perfect.
Yeah, I would.
I feel
have
like
no
a lot
issue.
of developments that were like against a mountain, I think they could be 35, maybe a little more in some spot, maybe. Don't quote me on that.
It fit into the aesthetics around
Exactly,
it.
so have 2 thoughts. The one is scale, one is height, to continue with the height. I also was feeling like 35 foot is, no big deal, it's okay, it's from a house, it's okay, it's okay. But then seeing like this, the design of just like, I was imagining 35, like, so not 35, and like, even though there's breaks and all, it still feels like it's like a huge difference. So I was thinking, is it possible to add that as another detail or, or specification, like it can be 35, but it has to be a pitched roof, yeah. No, it can be like that, I don't know if that's a thing or not, but
Sure,
that's kind of
well-
my thought, because it's a huge difference. And then the other one was scale, maybe that's a thing that we could add on the architecture, because that is one of the how can you say that, that is something that architects actually look into when designing about scale, so maybe that's something that could help us to add to it, to be like, okay, we're gonna analyze the scale of your proposal compared to the rest of the space,
rest of the space.
the rest of the,
Like neighborhood.
the neighborhood, yes.
Well, that was something I put in the report, and it's kind of like a concept, is to say like, maybe like 35 feet is the max, but perhaps you could put some, and I don't know if legally it would work. Nick will have to look into it, but you say like, your house can be no more than 10% taller than other buildings within
Mhm.
100 feet or something. And then over time, that would allow, if people redevelop every home on a block, that would allow it to eventually get up to that 35 foot
But
still,
at least it's
but
not like a,
it kind of reduces, it would require it to over time grow rather than someone tear down a 20-foot house and build a 33-foot house. I don't actually know if we can do it, and it probably would get complicated, because then we'd have to like calculate the height of all the buildings in a radius, but You could say something like it can be like it has to be the same, can't be more stories than the house on the block with the same amount of stories or something like that.
So it sounds like we're all in agreement to move forward with this. How do you envision trying to do this? You want to put all 5 together, do a meeting first to get input, kind of like you did with the comp plan, and then work on sections? I mean, what's,
I think maybe we could prioritize sort of like what, and I mean, council will have some of this prioritization as well, to say, do we want to work on all this right now, or do we want to just work on some portion of it? But perhaps, like, it sounds like in general, the board is interested potentially, at least in looking more at all of these potential proposals. It's just a matter of like, what's the top priority and what's kind of like bottom of the list. And maybe for like next meeting, I can kind of put more detail into all of these,
Okay.
just so then we can kind of decide that.
sounds good.
Yeah, we could even have a joint meeting to be.
And, you know, maybe after next meeting, we say like, hey, we're gonna do an open house, like, come during this period, and you know, some of us or all of us will be here and we can like hear what people's brainstorming ideas are.
Mhm.
Do you wanna,
Bobby has a comment.
I have a few notes. I would hone back on the shade for the height restrictions, keeping in mind, you know, it's not going to be an exact amount of feet in each location that would maintain that shade is not blocking the house.
because we don't really have a shade standards right now.
A lot of times when they're building one, we make them do a study and submit it with the packet,
Right, but we
Shade.
definitely.
just like a traffic thing.
Like, we definitely would not require it for a single family home.
Right, right.
There's no process. We probably, well, we certainly could require it, and maybe we do just mandate it as like, you have to provide a shade study, and if it's shading,
I mean, if
Streets.
it's above a certain height too.
right,
Just like the parking, the traffic study, I think it should be mandated, and if we want to waive it, not just, what was the term in the other one, they got to do the smaller scale one?
oh, yeah, like
Yeah.
the traffic analysis.
Yeah,
or something.
analysis
Study.
compared to a study, yep.
Right.
Anyway, those are things we can go over
Sorry
to
for,
do, yeah.
Please, I have a few notes. I'm just gonna- So I have to say, adding landscaping restrictions, you know, 4 Points said that they would xeriscape. That was just in a meeting. I don't think there was anything holding them to that. And they put in a couple of native plants, but like all of the sod in the water is crazy. I would also consider looking at construction restrictions as well, because, you know, we're looking at long-term, once this is all built and pretty, it's great, but 4 Points was an absolute disaster. In my opinion, I was right. I mean, they came into my yard to hang their fence off of my fence to like create their construction zone, and I could open my gate and I was in their construction zone. And they shook all of our houses so terribly that there were falling retaining walls, there's further cracks in my foundation, you know, and the traffic was horrendous. I mean, there weren't even speed limit signs through the alley that everybody was just rerouting to, and they had some random detour signs that's like, where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Construction process, I think, would be really valuable, especially at a spot like Carlson, where if you take out those roads right next to, people are gonna be mad. As far as a community meeting goes, I do think having an educational session of what we're actually talking about, what these pieces are, would be really beneficial. I would suggest have a radio show on Keiko, we could do a posting there, you know, any postings to get the word out, so, cause I think with Carlson, it was very successful in part because there were postings on Carlson's property. Also, just my opinion about Carlson, related to education, I think, you know, if I understand, there's about $500,000 worth of repairs to do on that building,
Way more.
way more, okay,
Millions and millions.
in the millions.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know. It is not a horrible building, overall, I know it has a lot of repairs to do. But I was also thinking it could turn into an adult school. There's rules about having it be like, we could have transitional schooling for adults. I don't know, and on that, maybe this wouldn't be a restriction per se, but this could be a suggestion that if you are purchasing a property, you could somehow maintain some parts of the building or original footing or something, that you don't have to completely eradicate everything that you're doing and totally rebuild, just for sustainability's sake, cost sake, construction sake. And I did make another note. I do think people are feeling, you know, to me, I'm a little indifferent about aesthetics, you know, historic looking or whatnot. If somebody wanted to come in and build a beautiful glass building, like, I don't know if I would be opposed to that, but I do think people are feeling very protective right now for a lot of reasons. So I think this is good to open up to the community thoughts of just kind of how we want our community to look in the future. So. Yeah, those are my notes right now.
Well, and a note on potential use of Carlson would be a good one to attend school board meetings.
Yeah, I was
because
gonna say.
the thing, we probably could have saved some time the last couple of weeks if, people had talked to the school district
Yeah.
before and not tried to talk to.
Because it wasn't the city that made all those decisions. The
No.
school board put them under contract and, yeah.
Well, and they did host a
It would be
meeting, a
like-
community meeting, we
Yeah.
listened it out, and so I don't know if it was well attended or not. But
Sure.
I would hope it was, if people have feelings and the school board's offering to talk to them at the new Carlson. I hope just as many people showed up there to hear and listen as they did. Thought, right, it should be both ways, and so
Right.
they can explain.
Right,
Did
but
you guys attend that one a couple years ago where they did it at the Carlson in the gym? And got community input with what they'd like to see happen with the property? And I think that was a lot of it too, is it didn't quite come out with what I think everybody that was there that night had envisioned also. So I think that created some disconnect
There,
too.
but we didn't.
You were at it,
know
weren't
about
you? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Cause they were looking at
Didn't know.
multi-use, not just,
That's lovely, but it's up
Yeah.
to the people that are gonna pay for the property.
yes, it's up to.
Choose, right? Like and that's what I'm saying, like, I love that idea. It's also insanely expensive, and to renovate the building is insanely expensive, and so
Well, it
finding,
wasn't just renovated.
you know, finding somebody who's going to invest in that way is hard to come by. And so I think hopefully the next one will get closer to it, but being realistic with what's possible financially and find that person to come in and do it.
well, and that's where I think the most important thing that as property owners can do is say, let's get properties designated. Because it gives people access to tax credits and grants. They're protected by the historic district standards. It's not just a buffer, it's like you're in the historic district. Like you can't force that on anyone. But if enough people get together and do it, then you don't have to worry about a 35-foot tall building next to your house because that building's protected by the historic district. And so, like, there was an effort maybe 15 years ago for residential historic districts around town, and it just failed almost immediately because no property owners in town wanted it, besides the couple of folks who were
I
pushing
think
it
there
forward.
was,
Is it
Yeah.
There was like
expensive
a
to do?
few. I don't think it would really cost individuals a whole lot. We could get some grants and things to put together, some surveys that kind of survey like, okay, this area meets the historical integrity. And like the city can get resources to help with that process for sure. And then once you're designated, like some of it might cost more because you can't just replace your beautiful wood windows with just like the cheapest vinyl windows possible. But like there's a lot of resources in town to help people like figure out how to do it. And like if the, you know, if any of these buffer zone properties that are in our period of significance, you know, or just otherwise have value, wanted to designate, that's going to protect that buffer a lot better. Again, you can't say, hey, sorry, you're in the historic district now. Like that's not how it works. So, you know, but like Carlson Building could be designated because as a local historic site, there's no way it would get national designation, I don't think, or state, but just local designation protects it from being demolished.
I didn't know it wasn't.
Potentially. It's not in the historic district, like, but we could potentially designate it if the school district wanted to as the property owner, or if the future property owner did. Because like our criteria include like local significance, and so like the people associated with it and that's like architecturally, maybe the style isn't like in our period of significance, but there's a lot of significance.
I had an additional thought. We were talking about like height limits being related to structures around the property, but. And again, I don't know how feasible this is, but it could also be in relation to the structure. Like if there was a pre-existing structure on the property in relation to that structure. But there's tons of empty lots in town. Like you don't have to bulldoze something, build something. And in like the neighborhood I grew up in Denver, some of the nicest houses in the neighborhood were bulldozed because they were a single story and someone could build a 3 or 4 story house on the same lot. You know, which doesn't house more people, has absolutely no positive benefits at all. But you were just allowed to do something way bigger. So that was like huge incentive for pointless development that hurt the community.
So that could be something that would, as well as like, if you want to, I mean, hey, we could look into, are there demolition standards for buildings just in general? I think that might be tough to say, you can't demolish a building. Though we say it in the historic district, like there's standards you have to meet in order to demo. But could say, if you're going to demo, then you have rules governing what could go there afterwards. You know, but then like, oh, you demolish a building and then you wait 50 years, you know, then you're still held to that, or do people forget? I don't know, but I can look into it. So I think I probably have enough direction to say, at least next month, I'll come back with some more targeted information on what we potentially could or couldn't do. And then that can help us decide, here's the priorities we had in mind. And like, let's go forward with this and not with this. And next meeting is tentatively scheduled, just regular meeting, September 2nd. So I'm just mentioning that for anyone who's listening or in the room, like September 2nd, 6 p.m. work session would be after regular meeting.
Thank you, Dylan.
And I think it's a good topic that will get a lot of interest. And there's certainly some things people might say, well, let's just do that. We might not be able to, or it might be very difficult. There's other things maybe we have to get more creative on, but I think it is important that we start talking about all the different parts of the city.
Can I ask just a clarifying question? So for the September 2nd, love having y'all here. If we have the whole room filled again, how does that work with the work session? Not that, I don't think we will, but I'm just like.
In general, for work sessions, like work session is really between like, is for the board.
Yeah.
Like you can open it up to folks in the room if you want, but like someone couldn't just, like there's no guaranteed public comment for work session. So unless we set up like, let's publicize, like this is an open forum and we're gonna give everyone a chance to talk, and it's just like a brainstorm. session, which we could do as part of that meeting or any other date.
And I think it's just a work session for us still to see what direction we're all going. I don't think we're ready for that to be a big public. I wouldn't think, yeah.
And I would encourage anyone in town to set up time to chat with me over the net and like tell your friends, you know, like. I can take time to just like compile everything and say, here's what I'm hearing from folks. So that would also be helpful ahead of next meeting.
Has landscaping made it to your list? I know we have a lot going on, but I would like it to.
Yeah, I have a list right now of 9 potential code amendments that I'm just working on in general. Temporary CP will got there after tonight, so 8, I guess. Landscaping standards, I think the specific concerns are about like native species and xeriscaping standards, like stronger standards. Is there anything else?
I don't know if this fits, but I agree with the water usage, right? And so how does it maybe with the clearscape and native, it takes less water, but it's the new reality. And so I do think that how that fits in, I don't know. But.
And if we could, and we're able to, I mean, we have a couple organizations, local community organizations, Scrub the Soil is the one that is about sustainability, and the Garden Club, they're the ladies that are master gardeners. So if we wanted to be more specific about this stuff that we want to provide to people, either as reference or be more specific on the standards, we can use those organizations.
Sure, well, I could bring that back like next month if you want as another topic, just to say like, this is what we have now. Like, for example, landscape materials shall be selected, cited, and planted to produce drought-resistant landscape area, considering soil type and depth, maintenance required, spacing, sun, et cetera, compatibility with existing native vegetation preserved, then also xeriscaping, landscaping principles should be designed to be incorporated. So we can probably improve that and get more specific. Summit County, for example, has a list. It's probably 3 pages long of appropriate plant species that you can plant.
Wow.
We could just
And
adopt
that is
that
not
list.
too
Well, it
hard.
wouldn't really work here because they're a different hardness zone, but
But adopt the concept.
But we have a
create it.
CSU extension in the area that we had it, and hopefully we're gonna have it again, but they already have lists of native plants that work in this area. There are other ways of xeriscaping, like, what we have at the community garden. Can't remember the name.
like Alpine Garden.
Yeah,
Next to the dispensary.
it has Crevice Gardens.
Okay, so you're gonna add that. to
I'll bring
the-
that back for next
Okay.
month. Hopefully that will be not super long, but meeting, but there's probably gonna be a lot.
We can
Right.
make
Now
parts.
Comp plan, did you just want notes on it, input, or?
Yes, and so the one thing I will say on that is I had opened that up for about 6.5 weeks or so. It's been published, you know, I posted some things on Facebook and some, you know, bulletin boards and things like that. And I got a decent number of comments from people, like,
Okay.
I hosted an open house and only 2 people attended, well, 4 people attended, but I kind of forced 2 of them to attend. So it was not well attended, but I had maybe 4 or 5 other people who just contacted me to give some feedback, which is good. So what was published over that 6 to 8 weeks was changed slightly because I incorporated all those comments.
Okay.
So at this point, I wanted to say, all right, basically, we have a month. Potentially, my plan is that if we could schedule this to be, if we're ready to schedule it for adoption next month.
I think so.
I'm good with that, but I wanted to give folk, like, if people said, whoa, we've got a lot of big concerns that we need to keep working through, then I figured that was a good time today. And over the next maybe week or 2, but what I'd like to have, if everyone thinks we're ready, is for it to have like an action item to be adopted.
Okay.
And if there's small notes and comments and like, I I can just take those by email or whatever, like, we don't have to sit here for an hour or something and go over typos or formatting or things
Okay,
like that.
so I
but,
had a few things, so I can do that. Okay. There's
We
simple ones.
can, if you want, certainly, but I
If
feel
anything,
like,
she's gonna have a longer list.
I behaved.
I mean.
but I would say like, those sorts of small things, if it's really like a small thing and it's not about like real substance, then maybe we address it like outside of this meeting, just so we don't go super long,
That's fine.
but I.
Mine
happy
are
to
pretty
if you guys
simple.
want, But
They're-
if they are like substantive, like changing these goals, or this thing doesn't look right, or why aren't you adding that? Judy mentioned one to me, which I'll rework a little bit. It shouldn't, it's not gonna change the overall thing, but Judy had mentioned maybe adding a little bit more about strength to like investigating residential metropolitan districts. Which is in chapter 13.
Mine were
I have
simple things like Pegasus isn't mentioned, where you have busting mentioned, but not Pegasus,
I mean, that's a good one though.
under transportation.
I have one for housing.
I do too.
Yeah, let's take turn. Um,
You're gonna do a few quick, it sounds like.
Okay, that's fine.
yeah, I only have 5.
Oh, I
Um,
only have 6, 5, 6.
I mean, we can
Um,
certainly address that.
So I was wondering if we could address what actually affordable housing means in Idaho Springs.
We don't have a meaning for it,
I know,
so we can't.
what I'm trying to say is if we can, because we talk about affordable housing, that the conversation we had, and then we decided that, no, we decided, but we realized that the way for us to identify what is affordable for us in the community, instead of having the discussion of what's affordable, say affordable is not, whatever, is AMI. So if we could just be specified like what affordable housing, I mean, what I'm trying to say, it's like our level, I guess, or AMI.
But that's
So people
not
know.
a true statement, because not everything is based on the AMI for affordable housing, so we would be misquoting that.
Are you saying like Chafa and HUD have a standard that
Uh-huh.
says this,
Yeah.
but we know that's high, so what is it actually?
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of connecting that with our local situation, like saying, okay, this is what Chafa says or whatever in this region, but actually in Idaho Springs, affordable housing will be 30% kind of thing.
But who says that? Not every,
Well, or I guess our plan would.
well,
So-
yeah, but I think that's going a little deeper than.
But we've had conversations about how
Not everybody
the
would
field
agree with
house
that.
said that they were gonna be affordable, and we're like, well, that's affordable in Denver, it's not affordable here. So I was just thinking, if we keep having this conversation and came up
Right.
again, so why wouldn't we just add it to the?
Sure, I have 2 thoughts on this, and let me know if either or both or neither work for you.
Mhm.
Number one is, like, federal guidelines say that no more than 30% of your income should go towards housing.
Uh-huh.
So we could specify like, listen, our actual, like, affordability is, regardless of what Chaff and HUD say is affordable is, no, we're making sure that our housing is affordable to people, so it's no more than 30%. Like project support does, they only charge 30% regardless of people's income, so that one guy might be paying 1,800 a month and the other could be paying 300 a month, I guess. So like, that's one way we could kind of just say like, listen, we're not necessarily, like, we know what HUD says, but it's truly
We don't have
this.
a
But then
set.
the other thing that I haven't included, but and I can talk to Erica and the Housing Authority, is that they created Bear Creek County specific standards when they're reviewing potential partnerships, I guess. So like they would say, okay, like, yeah, I know HUD says this is your standard. Like, this is 100%, but what we actually wanna know is like, if we have a different formula we use and we won't fund you, even if you're meeting Chaffas, we're not gonna partner with you unless you meet our standard that we've set. So I could get more info on the housing authority, how they do it. Let me send that out to all of you and say, this is how the housing authority does it, should we add that in?
Can you
Because
say the affordable goal is 30%?
We
not
certainly
meaning
could,
then it's set in stone because it's gonna fluctuate for the life of this thing again. I mean, we know it's going to,
I mean,
Right.
But that was
the one thing they will
just-
update every time.
yeah,
well,
because this is done, I mean, this won't get done for
well,
5 years.
I mean, this seems like it could be a pretty easy thing if we went and said, listen, like it just knowledge is in there, like. Yes, the federal government or the state government says that this is affordable for Clear Creek County, but the reality is that our actual AMI is about $71,000 per year. And they say that the Denver Metro is 91,000. Like that data is in the comprehensive plan, but it's not specific to the housing section. It's in like chapter 2 or whatever. But like that's easy math to say like, well, if you're at 91,000, 100% is this rent. But the reality is our 100% is 71,000, so we're actually shooting for whatever that works out to 80% and lower, let's say.
Sure, however we
Thank
can
you.
explain it, I think it's better with it.
Why don't I, on this specific topic, I'll do a little more research in the next couple of days and I'll send that specifically out and say, hey, I'm thinking of adding this, and then if anyone has issues with that, then we can talk about it more, but that might be a pretty easy change, I think.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And obviously everybody needs to be with it. Cindy, you wanna go next?
On housing, I had on page 21, the needs and goals for housing established in the 2017 plan remain unchanged. Rebuild the field house.
We didn't build a field house.
Field house was built.
Oh,
That was funny.
yeah, no.
I mean, it's saying in here that it's saying that nothing has been, to me, I read that as nothing's been built since 2017. When was the other one built?
Which one?
River.
Riverbend. I was drawing a blank. Riverbend.
Riverbend was. I don't remember what it was built.
But anyway, so that's,
Is that from,
it's on page 21, housing, it's the first sentence.
well. Page 21. So it's like in chapter 2. It's actually, okay, it's not in the housing section. Page 21.
When you print it, it's page 21 in the bottom corner.
Right. Yeah, I was looking in the actual housing chapter, but I was in the wrong spot. Is this from, achievements since 2017? Yeah, maybe that should just be updated because, I mean, I would say like sentence 2 is what I'm talking about. Like we still have growth amidst an aging population with the need for affordable housing, workforce housing and senior housing. Like I don't think that's changed, like that needs to.
Okay, I mean, I just
but-
thought it,
But yeah.
when it says remains unchanged.
I
Yeah,
guess
that's up,
maybe it's
and
like-
you might have it in a different section where you're,
Maybe
but
it's
I just
still-
caught it on the sentence. Okay, and then
Yeah, you're
on
right, yeah.
transportation on the next page is where, gosh, I didn't mark this up. But where it talks about the busting and Pegasus, and then improvement, I would say improvements on the roundabout, because they've improved that quite a bit. Where did I see?
So the roundabout didn't even exist back
Okay,
when the 2017 plan.
and it does say roundabout in here.
I mean,
Achieved in the past years, long-term improvement, continue with.
it really doesn't talk about any of those achievements. I mean, not that we necessarily achieved them, but we, like, those are new transportation
Yeah,
options we didn't have.
maybe
in
I've got,
2017.
maybe I put the wrong page on it. Anyway, it's somewhere where it says busting. Cause I think they're two different things, but they're both under CDOT, which I think that's a plus. You know, And then
That makes sense. That's
page 23, the very last sentence, in 2025, the city formerly created the Historic Sites and Facilities Board. We had it before, it went away and it came back.
right. Well, it was not a
Different.
formal board though. It was
Okay.
like a citizen committee, I think, but I
Okay.
should clarify that.
No, it's fine then.
Um,
That, I just knew that we had it before. So I thought, should it say recreated? Okay, but it's fine if it was called something else.
Well, because it like wasn't under the city umbrella, it was just kind of like a
Volunteer thing.
volunteer, I
Okay.
mean, it still is, right? But it was like kind of just a partnership with the historical society in the city and then
Now it's more formal.
now it was like, we're creating this board. Can't let it fade away because of COVID or anything else, like it's gonna remain. So I'll clarify that because I think it's important that they are building on work that was done in the past rather than like this fully new thing.
Then on page 25, under the recreation, the last paragraph, it says final city, the Quinn ball fields, while already well used by youth and adult recreation leagues and activated for events like rapid grass annually. That should be deleted
Move rapid grass,
because it's not there anymore.
true. I probably wrote that when we assumed it was.
I know, that's what I thought. I thought, oh, some of these aren't revisited at all.
Probably.
I got two more and I'll let you go, okay, Uzi?
I wanna email them,
Okay.
I'm nice.
Yours are more complicated.
I would say if they're complicated, then we should talk about them.
Yeah,
Like if it's, but if it's just like little things like remove this. or
If you
change
feel like
this.
they're complicated, once I email them to you, you can bring them back up.
I mean, what I could even do next month is I could say like, let's do a 45-minute work session before the like, let's switch it around and do the work session first and then the regular meeting. And that way we like
And then we
knock
go
out
to the
any
bar.
final things. But
and the only other one I had was, page 30. Bye, you guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Is, economy, that whole first paragraph, right at the very end of it, the new cable car project being completed in town is expected to grow the city's tourism base. I don't know if you want to use the name of it.
oh my dear, people are.
Yeah, instead of the new, but I think it probably wasn't open when you wrote that part.
Probably not, and I doubt it will ever have a name change, but even so, if it does have a name change, that's not gonna really affect the plan too much, so I will change it to the official name.
You know what other, in the transit too, where I think it was in that same paragraph, it mentions the bus stay goes west and it names the places and goes east and it's very confusing. I don't know, just the way it read. Okay, that's it. Oh, there was one other thing, page 90. The first item on page 90 is Carlson Elementary School, which that line should probably just be deleted, and I don't remember what the gist of that was. Idaho Springs recreational facilities, and number one is Carlson Elementary School. They're not using the school anymore for recreation, are they?
Depends on what recreation means. They host summer camp
They used to
there
have
and-
basketball and stuff in there. Oh, did they have summer camp?
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, then I would leave it.
Yeah.
I didn't think they were allowed to use them.
During like off hours, can people play at the playground?
Yeah,
I'd say that
yeah,
counts.
no, I just thought they didn't allow people using it, so I didn't know.
Well, and also to be fair, that could have easily been something that just got missed because this list is almost unchanged from 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I had to add the mountain park in the community.
I would
park.
take it out then, because I almost think, wouldn't they get in trouble at some point? If something happens, I don't know.
They don't have it gated or anything for the, but you
The
can, I
playground.
mean, yeah,
Yeah, I'm just giving you a heads up, those were the only things that was it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's funny also that we have the hillside park on there, which is basically just the open space area above the water wheel.
Yeah.
I mean, like, people do recreate there, like,
Well, there's a
lots of
trail.
people walk their dogs,
Yeah.
but it's not like a formal park.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just remove it. It's also not owned by the city, so.
That's right, if it sells and stuff, then it's not in there, because this might have shelf life for everyone.
Hey, Dylan,
Hey,
The new school.
just so you know, the comp plan adoption will have to be a public hearing.
Or are they
So if
calling
you
it?
could just get with Wonder on that.
That's Carlson Elementary.
right, for like.
This is nothing
scripted
now, this is
things.
old Carlson.
That's where I'm
And
confused.
for noticing it.
Oh, yeah, I have a note that I'm gonna send out the,
Okay.
pretty sure I already have it on here to do the notice like 2 weeks in advance. That's just, I'll make sure it is. 'Cause
Okay, cool.
the, you adopt the comprehensive plan. And then council just kind of says, planning commission adopted the plan,
Thank you.
so.
Carlson, they're using the new school calling it Carlson and does recreation, so I would leave it there. I was thinking of the old building.
Oh, sure, well,
Right, so I was thinking of the old building.
right, maybe I need to put an address or something on all these.
No,
No, because the title is
No,
Carlson Elementary.
it's called Cindy Was Confused.
All right, well,
Cindy did bits.
When you say, when you mean old Carlson, you sure you say old
Old
Carlson.
I was just referring to it by the address. To be the official, but, so it sounds like at the very least, there's no major concerns about the vibe or tone or whatever, like. There's some small things to work on, and if folks wanna give me anything else, we can talk about it now, like I said, but if we wanna leave right at 8. I can make edits into, like, if there's a major edit that's needed, then I would let everyone know, but if it's like, hey, we're changing some wording here, or like deleting a small thing here, or whatever, like. just-
And when we go to approve it, if there is that major one, I'm sure it's enough to where
Right.
we can pass it with that change,
Mhm.
knowing that it should be fine. I think very well done. Oh my gosh.
I mean, again, we're just building off what we already have. I think.
It's way better.
Well, that's the thing, is I didn't have to start from scratch, so it's a lot easier. There are 2 new chapters, as you know, the water supply and the strategic growth. And that's the last thing I'll note is I changed the strategic growth plan, or like map a little bit to reduce. Like what we're calling like opportunity zones, like for example. Yuzuchi again, her house was considered an opportunity zone, because technically you're zoned for multifamily. But like, it does allow single family, so since it does have an allowed use on site, like. It's not really like, I don't really see it necessarily changing. If it does, great, but that's not a priority. It's more like East End is a priority for new growth because. It has the infrastructure and a lot of it is not the highest and best use, but. Single family home in R3 is a perfectly acceptable use, so.
The other thing, your appendices, the resources pages, the last 2. They're all over the place. Your spacing.
Oh, like the formatting,
Yeah, some of it is the auto one line and some of it is all together. It's page 141 and 142.
Oh,
When you
yeah.
look at it,
We
you'll
have 1
see.
minute.
I'm done. I just thought, it's just, yeah.
Someone take that away from me.
I will reformat the resources.
It's just that last bit.
And I might think of like kind of do a sort of appendices of some sort that kind of just makes it clear, like, okay, I'm looking for this subject, like I'll go to these pages.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you for all the work.
Fantastic, all right, Nick, anything else from you before we depart?
Nope, that's it for me.
Right, well, I hope you feel better.
I just
Thank you.
want to, I know somebody who's interested in the old Carlson School building, but it's very, very, very preliminary. She wants to see the plans first, the old plans for the existing building.
I would get a hold of the school district.
I sent them an email, have not heard anything back.
I don't know, do you have any plans of the, I wouldn't think.
I think it has to go through the district
I would
anyways,
think
so.
so.
I would imagine the
I would
building.
think the plans are on file with the school district. You'd probably just have to submit a core request with the school district.
And I emailed the president, but I haven't heard anything back, so.
She's traveling, right?
Hmm?
She's traveling, right?
Oh, okay, so I'll email somebody else.
Well, one more week.
But they're thinking of condos in the existing building.
Good, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Happy to adjourn this closed session.